For years, Luke Skywalker had come to terms with his father's dark past as the Sith Lord Darth Vader, choosing to forgive him for the atrocities he had committed. It was Luke's love for Anakin and his faith that there was still good within Darth Vader that had brought about his redemption and the destruction of the Sith. However, while Luke was aware that his father had helped the Emperor destroy the Jedi Knights, he didn't know the full story or specific details until decades later. During the events of the Legends Dark Nest trilogy, R2-D2 revealed footage of Operation Nightfall to Luke, showing Vader's attack on the Jedi Temple in its full brutality. R2 emitted a long, descending whistle, and the hologram of a large, fountain-filled chamber appeared on the floor in front of Han. The viewing angle was from high in one corner, where a security cam might be mounted, and the only movement in the room was the water falling from the fountains. C-3PO protested that R2 couldn't possibly have recorded this footage, since it was obviously from a security feed, and R2 replied that he had stolen the file just before he and Anakin had left for Mustafar. The droid told 3PO and Luke that the recording was of a room in the old Jedi Temple, and Luke recognized it as the Room of 1,000 Fountains, which he had read about in old records. The hologram continued to show the empty room, and Han began to think that the little droid had found one more clever way to keep secrets. Given the effect that secret was likely to have on Luke, Han almost hoped that the droid had. But R2-D2's acoustic signaler began to emit the tiny sound of recorded blaster fire. Stray dashes of blue began to streak through the hologram, blowing fountains apart, burning holes in the walls, vanishing into the heights of the vaulted ceiling. Dozens of children, dressed in simple Jedi robes and wearing a single braid on the sides of their heads, began to retreat into the room. The youngest, those under 6 or 7, simply tried to run or find a place to hide. The older ones were attempting to fight, using the Force to hurl benches and pieces of broken fountain at their attackers. Some were firing captured blaster rifles, while a few were trying to use their lightsabers to ricochet bolts at their unseen enemy. For the most part, they failed miserably but bravely, deflecting half a dozen or a dozen attacks before one sneaked through and knocked them off their feet. The teenagers came next, backing into the room with their lightsabers whirling, weaving a wall of flashing energy before a column of advancing infantry. Dressed in what appeared to be early stormtrooper armor, the soldiers assaulted ruthlessly, cutting down fleeing 4-year-olds with the same brutal efficiency with which they slaughtered the older Padawans. Han recognized the soldiers as clone troopers. An older Jedi with stooped shoulders and a gnarled face backed into view, anchoring the line of teenage defenders, his lightsaber sending bolt after bolt back at the attackers, lashing out to cut down one trooper after another. A pair of Padawans stepped in to support his flanks, and the entire line stopped falling back, the lightsabers of the young Jedi weaving an impenetrable wall of energy that, for a few short moments, allowed nothing past, not a blaster bolt, nor a clone trooper, nor even a stray glance. Suddenly, a blue lightsaber appeared at the edge of the hologram, beating down the defense of the first Padawan and slashing through his torso, then slipping past the guard of the other one and cutting him down as well. The caped figure wielding the blue blade began to carry the attack to the stoop-shouldered Jedi Master. The two stood battling toe-to-toe for only an instant before the caped figure slipped a strike and brought his own blade down on the defender's shoulder, cleaving him deep into the torso. The older Jedi's gnarled face paled with shock, and he collapsed in too much pain to even scream. The Padawans continued to battle on valiantly, but without the Master to anchor their line, they were no match for the sheer numbers assaulting them. Their defense collapsed, and the caped figure stepped aside, standing in seeming indifference as the clone troopers poured past to continue slaughtering the children. Finally, the last of the younglings had fallen, and the clones stopped firing. The caped figure studied the room for only a moment, then gave a barely perceptible nod and turned back toward the entrance. The face that stared into the cam was clouded with anger, the eyes sunken and dark. the mouth set in a grim slash, but there was no mistaking who it belonged to: Anakin Skywalker. Luke rose, telling R2 that was enough. Though his face maintained its composure, he proceeded to his personal quarters on the ship. Luke was incredibly disturbed by the footage, seeing his father mercilessly kill children. Though he had long accepted that these events must have happened, to see them firsthand was something entirely different. But Luke was older now, a Jedi Master, and had superior control over his emotions. He meditated alone, hovering in midair as he sought to center himself in the Force. Though his father's actions were heinous, Luke still loved Anakin and knew that his father had been corrupted and enslaved by the dark side of the Force. So, this story is crazy. Full disclosure, I did not read the full Dark Nest trilogy. Someone just told me in a comment that R2 showed Luke footage of Order 66, so I researched where that happened, and then I bought that one book. I think it's the second book of the Dark Nest trilogy. It has like Leia on the cover. And I skimmed through and I read those passages because I wanted to make this video, and maybe, I'll get around to reading the Dark Nest trilogy, but that's really far down in the EU timeline, and I only finished the Jedi Academy trilogy. I haven't even gotten to New Jedi Order yet. I feel like a very interesting aspect of the Star Wars story is Luke learning about the stuff that happened with Anakin in the prequels and in the past and stuff. I have a video on my channel about Luke learning about the Mustafar duel and his thoughts about Obi-Wan leaving Anakin to die. And that's like the biggest video I've ever done. Thank you to everyone who's watched that video. I really appreciate it. It's insane to see how many views it got. And I'm not trying to brag or anything. I'm just saying those are really interesting stories. And to know that Luke actually saw footage of Anakin killing younglings and children and Padawans in the temple is pretty crazy. It's different in canon. In canon, he is just told about Order 66 and that Darth Vader was one of like the enforcers that hunted down all the Jedi, which is pretty much what he knew before. But in Legends, Luke actually saw like full footage of Anakin killing children. And I think what's really interesting about that is, Luke forgave his father and believed that there was still good in him and that he could redeem him and everything. So it's like, if Luke learned all of this information, would he still forgive Anakin? Would he still feel the same way about his father? Luke, knowing everything that Anakin did, even though he probably accepted it, seeing the footage is a lot different. And that's why this story is very interesting, just to get a quick glimpse into Luke's thoughts on Order 66. Also, when he's a much older Jedi, he's a master, he's in better control of his emotions. I think if he saw the footage, like right after Return of the Jedi, he probably would have had a very different reaction to it. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and may the Force be with you.